So where we last left off with the Trans Am project, link at the top of the screen. I got the Volvo electric power steering installed and ended up breaking the pump, and I couldn't actually test the system. However, I did go on eBay and source myself a replacement pump, and it's junk. I tried plugging it in before I even pulled the other one out, and it turns out, I guess this came from a salvage yard, whoever pulled it, or if the car was in a wreck, it has a bunch of dents in it, and it just sounds like the motor's stuck, like it doesn't spin when you plug it in. So the salvage yard is supposedly sending me another one of these. But today, if we are gonna get to the point where we actually get to crank this thing over and see it's gonna start, I got a lot of stuff that needs to get done, so we might as well just jump right into it. All right, guys, so we are finally at the point we're like pretty much ready to crank this thing over and see if it's going to start. Last thing I do need to do is pop that driver's side header on. The headers I am using, they are Speed Engineering Shorty headers. I couldn't find a long tube that was going to fit this car. Hawks is the only company that kind of makes a custom Gen 5 into 3rd Gen F-body header. But with my motor mounts and how far I have the motor mounted, I don't think that is going to fit. Plus it's like $1,100 compared to like $350 for these. So I decided to go with the Speed Engineering, the Shorties. These aren't gonna be on the car forever. Like I said, I'm planning to boost this thing. So I really didn't want to spend a bunch of money on headers just to chuck them. And manifolds weren't gonna fit because the way the collector went down, it was just gonna hit the K-member. So yeah, these kind of worked. The passenger side bolted right in. The driver's side you saw, I had to do some very, very iffy TIG welding. This is in fact like the first thing I ever TIG welded with the machine that I got from Harbor Freight. So, I mean, it's not gonna leak. It's probably not the strongest thing. Definitely, any of you professional TIG welders, I am open to some pointers. But I mean, that's on there pretty good. I got the little adapter here. This is where the O2 sensor is gonna go. And the whole reason I had to do this is because the way the collector was angled originally, it was too close to the firewall. I couldn't get the V-band on it and it was just angled too like straight back. So I had to cut it, take a little bit out, weld it back on and pitch it down a little bit. Now it clears. This could go bolt in with the gasket, pop an O2 sensor, and we're ready to crank the thing over. All right, the time has come. We are finally ready to fire this thing over. You just saw me finish getting that header in there. It absolutely like fits perfectly now. I got the O2 sensor in. It's nowhere near the firewall. I got plenty of space. Got all the spark plugs plugged in, and I just finished dialing in the fuel pressure. But yeah, for the fuel pressure, I just turned the key to on just to prime it, and I turned the little Allen key on the top of the regulator to get it to 72 PSI. Being this is a GDI engine, as per PSI convergence instructions, for the harness, they said you need to have 72 PSI of base pressure, which is right where we're at. Now, as for how this thing is gonna run, I'm not sure. It has somewhat of a tune, like it has tuning stuff done to it. So the transmission was flashed to work with the ECU, the VATs or the security was removed, EVAP was removed. Like some stuff has been done to it. However, I haven't gotten a chance to get my hands on the injector data yet. So it's still flashed for the stock injectors, and I have LT4 injectors in there with an LT4 lift pump, with an aftermarket cam, with a larger lobe on the cam for the GDI pump. So this thing is gonna be stupid rich. So if it even fires up, it's only gonna be for a few seconds. It's 6:05 on a Sunday. So people aren't gonna be happy with me, but what the hell, I wanna see if this thing's gonna start. So let's just hop in, we'll try to crank it over, and then I'll kind of go through everything after just to show you guys the parts I use in case you're interested in picking the same stuff up. Let's get a little ventilation. All right, here we go again. I think the jumper pack cooled down enough. I mean, we got some fartage before, so hopefully this is the time it's actually just gonna fire off. Woo, look at that. It runs. Friggin' runs. All right, look at that. She friggin' runs. I can't believe it. I was starting to get a little concerned when it wasn't exactly starting, but once we got the air out of the GDI system, I think that was it. She finally fired over. She actually idled too. It was a little lopey, a little kind of rough, but with absolutely no tune or not even the correct injected data in there. I couldn't be freaking happier. The thing actually runs. Now, for anybody who's interested in the parts that I used for for the coolant hoses, I did end up using factory 2016 Yukon hoses that would have been paired to this motor. So upper Yukon hose, lower Yukon hose, and then I just cut out kind of the extra that wasn't needed and just rejoined it together with some unions and hose clamps. Same thing for the top, just kind of cut it, made a little room and put a union in there. Now I did have to change this because the original one I was using didn't have a fitting here. And this, I believe, is the steam vent hose on these engines. On the LS engines, they have a kind of a tube that goes across the bottom here with the hose coming off. I think this is that for this motor. However, on the Yukon, it's supposed to go to the overflow tank. That's kind of the highest point in the engine bay, because that's supposed to be where it kind of burps the air out of the cylinder heads, assuming this is the same as an LS motor. And with the setup in this car, unfortunately, right here is like the highest point of the cooling system. So there's really no other way I could have ran this. I mean, I probably could have even just plugged it, not even bothered to run it over here. However, I decided just to run it into the upper radiator hose. I could have ran it, or I initially was thinking of running it to the overflow. However, this overflow is not pressurized. This just takes the extra coolant when the system warms up. The Yukons are pressurized, so that hose can go to it. I'm not sure what'll happen if I try to connect it to there, if it's gonna boil over. Don't really know. If anybody has any other tips on how to run this, please let me know down in the comments. My catch can's hooked up. I got that from Amazon. It's like a $35 piece. Really, really nice catch can. The bottom of it unscrews when you gotta drain it. Totally recommend that. And yeah, I'm gonna link the upper and lower hoses. For the lower one, I did kind of mess it up. I ended up cutting too much out of the middle, and I had to go to AutoZone and just match this hose here that fit, and I ended up using the Yukon side for over there, and then this was just a random hose from AutoZone that turned out to work. However, if you're not like me and you don't cut too much out and mess it up, you can just use the entire stock Yukon hose and just cut the middle out and just rejoin it together to make it shorter. As you saw, I did get the Volvo power steering removed and swapped out, so that's actually hooked up now. I did not break the fitting off. It's filled up. It works. Haven't tried it on the ground yet, but it does run, and I did get all the air out of it, so I know the system is working. And then lastly, I tapped the back of the intake for the brake booster, so we have power brakes. I plugged this right here with a rubber vacuum plug because that port's not going to be used. And then I hooked the heater hoses up kind of like that to kind of hide them. This I'm going to actually zip tie to the cover once it's on. I got an aftermarket Derale transmission cooler, made some AN lines, ran into the trans, put some heat shielding on it just to make sure nothing was going to rub or get melted by the exhaust. And look at that, she friggin' runs. I mean, I don't really know what else to add. The friggin' car runs. Pretty good, by the way, for not having absolutely really any tune in it. Now, next video, it's gonna be the test drive. So I'm gonna be working on the kind of rest of the crap to get this thing roadworthy. Not so much the interior, probably just gonna throw a seat in it. So in order to test drive, gotta bleed the brakes, gotta do the shifter linkage, make the bracket for the shifter. Y pipe, need a friggin' exhaust, obviously. I wanna wrap and clearance the headers. So the passenger header, it's a little tight when the AC box is in there. So I wanna kind of ding it in a little bit and wrap them up so it doesn't like rub against the AC box. Same thing on the driver's side. It clears, but it's a little close to the steering shaft, so I'm just gonna clearance it a little bit. The fan wiring needs to get done. We have no cooling fans. I need to get all that finished up, and I need to fab the intake with the IAT sensor. Body-wise to test drive, I gotta get the headlights back in, the front end back on, the fender on, the hood latch on. I don't really need the hood latch. I can test drive without the hood, and I probably will. Gauge cluster has to go back in. It's sitting in there for now. I gotta bring the column back up and tighten everything down. Driver seat and the AC box I wanna get in to kind of get that hole plugged up so I don't get any potential fumes coming through the car. And that's it. So hopefully next video we'll get all that stuff taken care of. Well, next episode, I'm not sure if next video is gonna be on this car because it's a lot to get done. But yeah, next episode we're gonna take this thing out, we're gonna take it for a run. Once again, all the stuff that I used in this video is going to be linked down below, as well as my Amazon store, which will also be linked down below. Oh, one more thing for anybody who's wondering, the drive shaft I had made over at Mr. Drive Shaft over in Monmouth County, New Jersey. He also did the drive shaft on my Camaro when I had to have the chromoly one lengthened. He made an entire new drive shaft and just used my yoke for $400. I mean, you can't friggin' beat that. It fits absolutely perfectly. And as you guys saw, I also went and got the torque arm reinstalled, factory torque arm with the torque arm bushing. So everything under the car is ready to go. She got a drive shaft. Next video, we take it for a test drive. I'm really hot. It is very, very, woo, it's hot in here.